So what we're going to be doing today is going over the parts of a line graph. So to do this, our classes use TALKS. So remember, title, axes, label, key, and scale. So on the side of the screen, we have a data table that is discussing the depth in meters versus the number of bubbles. So in case you are wondering, the depth is going to be our independent variable. Our number of bubbles is responding to that, so that is our dependent variable. So the first thing we need to do on this is the title. So the title should include the independent and the dependent variable. And it typically goes at the top of the graph. So a good title for this graph would be depth versus the number of bubbles. Another way to write this could be depth effect on the number of bubbles. All right, so now I have my title, check. The next thing I need to do is make sure that my axes have the appropriate numbers on them. And I also need to make sure that they're in the right place. So axes and labels kind of go hand in hand. So I was introduced by a student the phrase dry mix. So we have the dependent variable, which is our number of bubbles, is responding, and it goes on the y-axis. This is the y-axis. So I will put the label number of bubbles on my y-axis. And I chose to go by fives because my largest number was 45 and my smallest number was 8. And so going by fives would allow me to have a good scale. All right, now for the mix part, we are going to have what is measured is the independent variable on the x-axis. So I'm going to have depth in meters is going to be on the bottom. So that is my independent variable. I also went by fives here to make sure that my scale was good because my smallest number was 2 and my largest number was 36. So going by fives gave me a good scale. So now looking at my graph, I have my numbers on my axis, so check. And both of my axes are labeled and they include the units that we are using. So that gives my L. On this line graph, we only have one line. But if I were to add another plant, and I'm just going to put a few dots on here. Say I had another plant that I measured at the same depths to compare my data to. So here we go. Sorry, my lines aren't perfect. If I had that, then I would need a key. So then I would have a key over in the bottom saying that plant A was blue and plant B was red. And this is my key. And so that is my key. And then we already talked about scale. Going by fives, you need to use up as much of the graph as possible. Your entire graph should not be jammed up into this much of the provided graph area. Okay, so that is my scale. And so this covers identifying the parts of a graph. This also covered my independent versus dependent variables.